Alright guys, we're back and we're ready for chapter 6. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I feel like I'm getting to see you guys a little bit, even though I have to imagine you there. I know you are. Chapter 6, In the Shadow of the Burning Fiery Furnace. Oh, we know this story. Outside Babylon, on the wide, level plain of Dura, Nebuchadnezzar built a huge gold statue. It soared over 90 feet in the air and seemed almost to touch the sky. You could see it from miles away as the sunlight flashed on the solid gold. King Nebuchadnezzar rubbed his hands with delight. He sent word to the governors and the princes and the judges and the treasurers to come from all the provinces. Now, for a dedication that will surpass every celebration that anyone has ever dreamed of. There would be a great orchestra to play. Every man would wear his finest silks and velvets. Everyone would bow at the sound of the orchestra, and anyone who did not bow would be thrown into the terrible furnace of fire. Ah, what a celebration that would be. The king's pages hastened throughout the city streets with the proclamation. Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael heard the words. They looked at one another in consternation. That image, he intends for us to bow down to it? We can't do that. They shook their heads. Never. But Hananiah moved his shoulders uneasily, as if he could already feel the heat of the furnace. You know how angry the king gets if he sets his mind to something. Azariah bit his lip. Sometimes he acts like a madman when he's angry. I wish Daniel were here. He'd tell us what to do. Mishael held up his hand. We already know what to do. Yes, but I keep remembering how horrible the heat was the last time. You mean when Nebuchadnezzar burned up Zedekiah and Ahab? Azariah whistled. Nobody could save them from the fire. Well, don't forget, they were false prophets. True, still, it was as if that burning fiery furnace stood right beside them, the flames licking out, reaching for them greedily. Mishael shuddered, and then he squared his shoulders and took a deep breath. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay true to God, even if it means burning in the furnace. I will not bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's image. Azariah reached out to clasp his hand. Me too. And me, said Hananiah. It was with hearts beating hard that the three men walked out onto the plain of Dura to stand before the golden image, summoned by the king. King Nebuchadnezzar sat in his gaily decorated tent and looked out across the field. Everything was exactly how he had planned it. The huge golden image was dazzling in the sunlight, blinding those who looked too long at it. The great orchestra was assembled and stretching out across the plains. The leaders of all the provinces ruled by King Nebuchadnezzar waited in humble submission. On this great day, they would bow down before Nebuchadnezzar's huge idol. Everything awaited the king's command. Cornet players stood with their cornets at their mouths, the multitude in regular rows, and the huge furnace, its fire already burning, waited nearby. Today, the unity of the world empire in one religion would be manifested. King Nebuchadnezzar motioned for the ceremony to begin. The orchestra blared, and as the sound reached the waiting people, they all fell on their faces on the ground. Their kneeling bodies looked like a giant ocean wave sweeping across the plain. The king looked proudly, tasting his victory. It was sweet to be king of Babylon. And then he became aware of a commotion. "O king," the Chaldean said hatefully, "didn't you say that everyone must worship the golden image?" "I did," said the king. "And who dared not obey?" "Those 3 Jews, O king, whose Babylonian names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They refused to bow down to your golden image." The king's face turned red. "How dare they? Bring them here." Within a few minutes, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were thrust at the king's feet. His voice shook with anger. "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you will not serve my gods?" The 3 Hebrews did not flinch. "Yes, sir." The king waited for their blubbering apologies, but instead they stood quietly before him. The king's eyes burned with anger. "Because you have served me well, in my mercy, I will give you one more chance. The orchestra will play again, and if you worship the image, okay. If not, I will throw you into that furnace. Do you understand? What God, even your God, can save you from that fire?" Hananiah's eyes were drawn irresistibly to the fiery furnace. Its hot heart burned red with glowing coals, and cinders spewed into the air. It hadn't been easy this morning to say that he would not bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's image. It was 100 times harder now, standing by that blasting heat, to say he wouldn't bow. He shut his eyes a second and asked God to help him be brave. And then he looked at Azariah and Mishael. They were afraid too, he could tell by their faces and their tense mouths, but they were both shaking their heads no. They would not bow to the idol. Azariah turned to the king and looked him in the face. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need any time to think about it. We don't need a second chance. We will not bow down to your image. If you throw us into the furnace, then our God, who we serve, is able to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us. But if he does not deliver us, if we die in that furnace, then we want you to know, O king, that we are still not going to serve your gods." King Nebuchadnezzar turned with rage. "Guards! Guards! Heat the furnace 7 times hotter! Hurry! In fear of your lives, hurry!" The frightened men heaped fuel and oil on the flames, and it rose into a monstrous, blistering pillar of fire. "Tie them up! Throw them in! Hurry! We will see if their God can save them," the king thundered. Frightened, the soldiers fumbled and twisted the ropes, forgetting to take off the men's hats and coats. As they thrust them into the furnace, the flames flared up so hot that they suffocated the soldiers. Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael fell into a heap in the center of the white-hot fire. King Nebuchadnezzar expected to see the men writhe in pain and die. He peered through the licking flames, and what he saw made him gasp. "Didn't we throw 3 men into the furnace?" His counselors nodded. Nebuchadnezzar squinted through the flames and counted with a trembling finger. "Whoa, I see 4 men, and they're loose and they're walking around in the middle of the fire as if it doesn't even hurt. And the 4th man looks like the Son of God. Could it be that the God of heaven and earth, the God of gods, had made himself man, as the wise man Daniel had prophesied? These men, who scorned the worst that Nebuchadnezzar could do, did God himself walk with them? The form of the 4th man is like the Son of God." Nebuchadnezzar buried his face in his hands. There was a long, long silence while he sat there. Finally, he stepped up to the opening of the furnace, and his voice was not commanding now. It wasn't harsh or kingly. It was quiet. It was pleading. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out. The three men stepped briskly out of the furnace. People crowded around them, amazed beyond speaking. The fire had burned off the ropes, but it hadn't touched them. Their clothing was not even burned. Their hair was not even singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. King Nebuchadnezzar was overwhelmed. He groped for words. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him. They yielded their bodies to be burned rather than obey my command. They would not serve any god except their own. He turned to the scribe beside him. Write this down. I make a decree. Any people or nation or language that says anything bad about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they'll be killed and their house knocked down. There is no other God in any nation that can save like this. And then the king gave the three Hebrew men important new jobs governing the province of Babylon. The three friends could hardly wait for Daniel to get back to Babylon so they could tell him about it. They told him about their new jobs. They told him about the wonderful things that Nebuchadnezzar had said about God of heaven. The thing that they couldn't tire of telling. The thing that they remembered with the greatest joy. When they were thrown into the terrible fire, they discovered God himself had come to walk with them. Who is afraid of the king's hottest fire? Ananias said joyfully, when God himself walks with you through it. That is a really good question. What do you have to be afraid of? What is it that scares you the most? When you remember that God himself will walk through it with you, there's just nothing that scary. Love you guys. We'll see you for the next chapter.